to support women who want to keep their edge, but want to also step back and really deeply enjoy the life that they've built for themselves. So, my name is Julie Cyvonne, Cyvonne, and that's juliesavone.com or Julie Cyvonne on Instagram are both great ways to connect with me.
So, first question for my audience, how did you get involved in this type of work and why?
Yeah, what a like crazy. No one writes in their journal as a little kid, right? Like I'm gonna be in psychedelics when I grow up. But I was very like bought into the dare thing when I was a kid. And I actually was an attorney. I was a practicing attorney first. I practiced for 3 years, and that is a story we could really like dive deep into. But I think the most succinct way to say it is that I really believe that life is we're in the river of life, and the river could be God or the universe, whatever you subscribe to. But the river wants you to reach a path of your highest congruence, like your soul's highest calling. And you can be a salmon, right? Because we do have free will. You can swim upstream. You can be a little sticky starfish and cling to the rocks. And man, I was clinging to that rock of like, I'm a lawyer. I went to law school. But I was so deeply unhappy. And there were so many, again, like I could list off so many different things that were clearly out of alignment in my life that was the water, right, rushing on me saying, hey, girl, this is not for you. Eventually, I got the message. I let go of the rock. I pursued a coaching certification. So I got certified to coach before I ever entered the world of psychedelics. And at the same time, I was also running a nonprofit out of LA. And so in this nonprofit, we had this contact in Colombia, and he was an expat from the States. He came back to, at the time, I was in San Diego. He came to San Diego and said, hey, like, let's, meet in real life. We've been doing all this good work over Zoom, right, for a year together. I was like, yes, of course. We went to dinner, and he said, hey, I have this company I'm investing in. Will you go check it out with me? I was like, yeah, of course. Like, I feel like we're best friends at this point. Why not? And so I went to the company with him and it was a microdosing company. And I was like, what is this? He was like, well, here, try it. Tell me what you think. And then, I'd love to hear your feedback. And I'm thinking, what do you mean? Like, I'm not just gonna pop. I'm not one of those girls who, like, if someone, found a pill in the bottom of their purse and said, here, take this, like, that would not be me. Okay. But I was interested in it. And I have a background in science. So I start researching and I take a facilitation course and I start combining facilitation with my coaching. And I was doing it just on myself, like for my anxiety. And it totally like changed my life. And here we are now.
So, for those who don't know, what are psychedelics and how do they apply?
Yeah, so psychedelic is really any substance that changes your perception, your I like to call them manuals for reality, right? Like we all have different models and paradigms for existence that we're operating in. We all have different beliefs that we have subscribed to as fact that says like this is what we're capable of or this is what we're not. For instance, the manual that I used to have is I have a lot of anxiety. And I really used to believe that my anxiety was like a life sentence. It was never going to go away. There's always going to be a remnant of it. So psychedelics include psilocybin, that's the active compound, and magic mushrooms. They include LSD or acid. It includes ayahuasca. And it is anything that is, like I said, altering. Yes, at larger doses, it's completely altering your perception. And that's when we talk about like hallucinations and seeing things, seeing different colors, maybe getting different messages. But at smaller doses, what it's doing is producing positive changes in our brain that allow us to heal, to shift our behaviors, and to ultimately experience relief from a lot of these persistent mental health issues that a lot of people suffer from.
I'm glad you're sharing that because I can just look around where I live and then look around my inner circle, and there's always someone going through something,
Mhm.
right? And a lot of times we don't know what we're going through. So, the women that you work with, how do you help them to identify maybe some of the obstacles that they're facing when it comes to their mental health and trauma?
It's so interesting. I would say most of the women I work with, they are women who've done a lot of good work, so they are really self-aware, but they don't necessarily like they feel like nothing has worked for them, right? So maybe they've gone to therapy and they're like, man, I've been paying this deductible for 3 years and like nothing is really different. Or maybe they've tried pharmaceuticals. Um, maybe they have, read all the books, listened to all the podcasts, or doing the journaling. They're doing the things that people say they should or need to do in order to experience relief, and they're not seeing the changes they want. But for those people who feel like, I'm not sure if like something is off, if you're listening to this and saying, I'm not sure if something is off, then that to me signals like, hey, you're experiencing some sort of discomfort that's telling you like there's an issue. Because I personally right now, I would not ask myself that question. I feel really good, but like, 5 years ago, man, I was asking myself that question all the time.
Yeah, like some people will say that, you know what, Julie, Terrain, I'm going through something right now. They may not even know what they're going through. But once you start that journey, no matter how far along you are, because many times it is a lifelong journey, you begin to identify that, well, today I really feel good because I'm not going through what I was going through a year ago. Is there some fear that some of the women you work with have when they're starting that journey that maybe they think they're not good enough or worthy of the changes?
Yeah, I really think that a lot of the women I work with, for them, that sense of worthiness or enoughness is actually super sneaky because they are usually women who have achieved a lot, right? Like they've efforted a lot, they've produced a lot, whether it be their own business or a corporate career, a certain number of accolades. And so they think, well, of course I think I'm worthy. Of course I think I'm good enough because I have produced so much, I have done so much. But when they get really down to it and still in their sense of being, they start to recognize that their overproducing and over efforting has come from a deep lack of self-worth and self-love within themselves. And they think they're going to fill that hole by doing more, by being more, and not realizing that what they're really afraid of is not being chosen. It's not being accepted. It's not being loved for who they are. And so oftentimes, it's really struggling with being able to slow down, with struggling, not being able to take their foot off the gas, not feeling like they can find a romantic partnership or relationship because there are so many abandonment wounds, self-love wounds, worthiness wounds for those women.
Self-abandonment is so tough. Like you look at those who have, let's say, avoidant attachment styles. It gets rough, they avoid, right? And it's interesting to see men and women who are high performing. They know exactly what to do, exactly what to say, exactly how to look in their career. But then when you get them in front of other people, sometimes those skills doesn't transfer over and they're wanting, to your point, they could be, oh, this is my third divorce. Maybe I'm not worthy of marriage. And I work with women who are over the age of like 45, 50, so they're older in life. And I remember one of them sharing with me, Terrain, what if I'm not worthy of love anymore because love is for when you're in your 20s?
Mm.
I'm 50. I have the career. I have the awards when I look at my bookshelf, but I just don't have that same success in relationships. In that example, Julie, how would you help them to navigate that type of limiting beliefs?
I mean, I can speak from experience here. And this year ended a relationship that started 4 years ago, right? So, like, I'm a very different person now than I was when it started. But when it started, I was really struggling with anxious attachment. And, I could pathologize myself all day long. My dad died when I was 6. I have abandonment issues. I am anxiously attached. I feel like if someone's drifting away, like this inherent, like, gut need to bring them closer. Um, and it was a lot of working on the security within myself to know that like I am good either way, right? That like and a deep trust and surrender in the process of love as well, that like what's for me can't miss me. That, love is peace, love is not chaos. And it was a lot of reprogramming and relearning like true safety and relationship. And so ultimately, we did not grow together, and I don't mean this in like any sort of callous way, but it really stopped being a value add for me. But I got to choose my own peace. And I got to choose, I really have this amazing relationship with myself now. Where like, I am not bored. I am never bored or lonely with myself. I feel so good. And, the place of power is really knowing that, like, I don't need a relationship to be happy because I am happy regardless. And like 1 + 1 = 3. I want to come together with another full and complete human being to create something in our relationship that is a beautiful extension of both of us, but that neither of us need each other to complete the other.
Do you then think that some people don't have a healthy relationship with themselves, so maybe that could be why they look for relationships with other people to overcome that?
I mean, I think everyone who's really feeling like I have to have this relationship or there's some void in their life without a relationship first must do that deep work to fill the void within themselves, right? Because nothing outside of you is going to complete you until you can be happy, whole, and complete on your own. That relationship is not going to suddenly give you the sense of security. And I'm not saying like if you're not at the place of, oh, I am perfectly whole and complete on my own, that I can't be in a relationship. You can definitely do that work in relationship. And there's some work that you can only do on yourself in relationship, I believe, because you need to be triggered by another. You need to have that mirror put up in order to really like do that difficult work. But you also have to understand that like this is a journey that some people think like, oh, I got into a relationship, so that's going to solve my feelings of loneliness. Oh no, babe. It's going to kick up a lot of dust and you are going to really get to sit with that. And you can do it in a relationship, but you have to have the understanding that that relationship isn't a magical band-aid that is going to fix all your problems.
Someone once shared with me he was struggling with something and he knew that his circle of friends weren't the best for him, but he didn't want to leave because as a child he was always abandoned. He struggled with abandonment issues. So he stuck around people that he knew, and I apologize for this word because I hate using it sometimes, were toxic, weren't the
Mm.
best, were chaotic. And then we had a conversation, and I asked him, I was like, well, if you don't believe that they're serving you in the way that you want to be served, why are you still around? And he shared terrain. I don't think I'm worthy of being around people who aren't this
Oh,
way. And if I were to leave, then I would be alone.
oh,
And I see so many people struggling with that feeling because they maybe have the experience that you and I have, Julie, but when they are face to face with the work, they know that that journey, especially in the beginning, is going to be lonely just because some people would fall off. For yourself, what are your thoughts on people who are struggling with loneliness and maybe they're hesitant to get help from you or from me or from someone else?
oh wow. Well, a few things. First of all, I also am right there with you. Like the word toxic is so overplayed, overused. And I do think there are obviously instances where, yeah, like it's an appropriate word. So I hear you, and it sounds like this guy was really in that situation. Um, ooh, yeah, the fear of being lonely, the fear of being alone. One thing that I started to do that I really encourage everyone to do, I think is such a beautiful practice, is I made a note every day with something that I liked about myself. On my phone, I would just add something that I enjoyed about myself. And I would read through the list every day as well. And I wouldn't just read it like I'm reading a grocery list, like, oh yeah, I need eggs and lemons and blah, blah, blah. I would sit there and I would really feel the thing of like, I love my laugh. I love that when someone calls me and they need me, I know that I am there and they can depend on me and that like my words matter to them. I went through all of these things because oftentimes this fear of loneliness is a fear of like not liking an aspect of ourselves. And I also think it's an important time to ask like where am I out of congruence with my values, with my sense of integrity, right? And where do I need to sort of right that ship? Because at the end of the day, I do think of a fear of being alone is like there's something that we are afraid to look at within ourselves, and we think it's going to come up and the mirror is going to be presented when we're alone. So like get ahead of it, you know? If you feel like, "Ooh, I know that that is not a way I want to be spending my time," or that's something, for instance, I used to kind of be a liar. I would lie about things. And looking back, I was just a social chameleon. I was trying to say something that I thought someone wanted to hear in order to gain acceptance in a social circle, because at the end of the day, our primary drivers biologically and from an evolutionary perspective is to be accepted into tribe. And so I know why I was doing it, but I had to really stop lying, right? And once I had stopped, I wasn't afraid of being with myself because it was like no one could get me because I had nothing for them to get.
That's a fantastic point because we would believe the lie more so than the reality. And when you're using psychedelics to help these women, I remember reading that sometimes they would cope. So maybe the lie is a way for them
Mhm.
to cope. So for those who are maybe on the outside looking in for the work that you do, what are maybe some of the misconceptions about psychedelic therapy or coaching that you want to debunk and let people know that it's not that way?
I think the biggest thing that I hear all the time, this I hear this especially from like professional women and moms, is like, oh, I can't microdose because like I have to pick my kids up from soccer, or I have to go into the operating room, or all these things. And it's like microdosing is truly subperceptual, meaning you're taking such a small amount that there is no possibility of you having an impairment of effect of like your vision or your feeling or anything like that. It's truly existing below the surface of your awareness, but it is producing positive effects in your brain. So it's like you're getting all these benefits without receiving any sort of like negative side effect or what you might perceive as a negative side effect if you're trying to pick your kids up from soccer. So that's a huge one. Just really knowing like microdosing, if you done, and I hate this word. I really don't like right, like I'm right and you're wrong, because man, everything is just like a lens and a perception. But there are some people who would say like taking, for instance, half a gram is considered a microdose. No, it's not. Like you're gonna feel that. That to me is not a microdose. A true microdose is 100% subperceptual. So, for instance, I start everyone off at 100 milligrams, so zero point 0.1 grams, right? That is truly like you're not going to feel anything at all, and that's the sweet spot. And that's when you start to again have these positive effects in your brain without seeing anything. So for anyone who's like, I want to do this, but I'm too busy, or my life is too full, or I don't have time to like go trip in the woods. That's not what this is.
Are there some people who maybe are hesitant because they don't want to be judged by others?
Yeah, I had that come up really strongly. I mean, for myself, my mom still doesn't fully understand what I do. My mom was fully sober. Like she would not even take a painkiller if it was prescribed to a doctor from a doctor post surgery. And so she doesn't really understand what I do or why. And it is honestly, I would say the biggest part of my work and like my positioning on social media, for instance, is busting objections. It's busting myths because there is just so much like BS out there, mostly that's been spread from the government, and not, I don't like to say false information because it's just lies. Like information implies that somehow it's like rooted in reality and it's not. So that's a big one. And I had a woman who she took my training program to like do what I do. And she faced so much backlash from her parents, and it was just really heartbreaking. It's one thing I can hold my own tough relationship with my mom, but it was sad to see that from her parents. And I do think like it's one of those things where when I went through my first personal development program, they kind of warned us and they said like, hey, you feel like you're totally a changed person, but if people have known you in one way, like let's say they've known Julie the liar, it's going to take them a minute to believe that you've made a change, and you have to earn that change in perception. And man, oh man, has that ever been true with my work in psychedelics, where if people have a bad taste or connotation that's negative in their mind, like I have to earn their respect. I have to earn their trust by showing them like I am a person full of integrity and honesty, and that this is truly transformational, but it does take a little bit more time.
And I think that's part of the problem because you're helping people who've gone through a type of trauma. Anxiety is that. And in a lot of ways, they're vulnerable, and maybe the people around them are skeptical because their person, their partner, their whomever is going through a difficult time. So I can understand the hesitation not only from a treatment perspective, it could be anything, right? It could be, hey, do you want to go to that therapist or that coach? They're protective because they're going to have to be vulnerable. What role do you think vulnerability plays in the type of work that you do with your clients?
Oof, vulnerability, I really feel is like it's the key to unlocking everything. So much of our society is built around like, don't show your true feelings, don't cry, don't have an emotion, don't react. And all that's doing is stuffing things down. Woody Harrelson has this funny thing like, he says something about, you can either, have your emotions, or you can basically get cancer. Like he says it way cuter than I do, right? But basically the sentiment is there, if you're not going to express yourself, that emotion isn't just going away because you're not dealing with it. It is causing stress in the body, right? Like cancer is manifesting as a result of our our pent up emotion, when we see the increase in heart disease in this country. Well, yes, I mean, part of it is definitely due to diet, but we don't have effective stress management tools, and it's leading to higher resting heart rates and higher blood pressure. So, vulnerability, I believe, is the key. Like, I cannot tell you when I first started, before I got into psychedelics, when I first started coaching, I would not show up on Instagram unless I had a full face of makeup. Like I could not be seen without makeup. And I know I have makeup on right now, but if someone were to like go check out my Instagram and watch my story for the rest of the week, like you would see plenty of times when I don't, right? When I don't have any makeup on, I'm okay being seen. I just cried on a podcast the other day, right? Like maybe I'll cry on this podcast. That is not something I would have ever done in the past because I was afraid of how it made me look. And it's just wasting so much time being concerned about our perception through someone else's eyes when, like, are you okay with how you're perceived by yourself? Like, if you're that scared of being vulnerable, I would guess you're probably not okay with how you view you, which at the end of the day, like, we came into, I know this sounds a little harsh, but we came into this world technically alone and we're going to leave this world alone. You got to get right with yourself.
Yeah, it's like that saying, you're born into diapers, you die into diapers. You come into the
Yeah.
world naked, and many of us die naked. Right?
I hope I'm cozy, but you never know.
Hey, I've been working on my body for a number of years, so if I have to die that way, I'll be happy. And plus, there's no shame and guilt in the afterlife, right?
I love that for you. I hope you die naked then too.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, hopefully all my exes can find me. Wouldn't that be like
Oh my
see,
God.
not saying that they're gonna cause it, ladies and gentlemen. I'm just saying. Do you then think that maybe we spend too much time listening to the voices of society and not the voices within ourselves?
Oh, 1,000%. Oh my gosh. If I could like get someone to do one thing, it'd be like tune out all of the excess noise outside of herself. I have a saying that I live and die by. Well, I haven't died yet, but it's that I'm very careful of who I listen to feedback from. And basically, if you're not living a life that I want to live, if you haven't done the thing that I want to do, your feedback isn't welcome. You can yap. I'm not going to be rude. I'm not going to be disrespectful, but I'm not going to listen to you because you have never done the thing that I want to do. So, how would you know how to get there? And if someone isn't a happy person, if they're a Judge Judy, if they're a sullen Sally, and you're listening to what they're telling you, why do you think that's going to make you feel better? Like, that to me is the definition of stupidity.
I think people have to develop the I'm not listening face. You know,
Yep.
like you have the RBF. I think people have to, because there are times where we will listen to someone and if we hear it enough, it's like children. You tell a child
Mhm.
they're ugly, they're stupid enough, the
Oh,
many
yeah.
child begins to believe it, right? And I think adults aren't immune because how many times do you see people with their friends and they're saying that they're making jokes, but the jokes are so specific about that person?
Yeah.
Right? I always say that there's a certain percentage of truth or real feelings behind every joke, especially if it's the same joke over and over again. How do you help women who are successful in many areas build up their confidence to resist the chaotic nature of maybe some of their peer groups who they haven't been able to move on from yet?
Ooh, what a good question. Well, I know we talked about how it can be really hard to step away from a peer group, especially if we like don't feel that we're worthy of being around a different type of person. But one thing that I always remind myself, because being on the internet, being a public facing person, like they're trolls. And I really always believe every time I see some sort of negative comment or mean thing that like would a happy person do that? And I always come back to this phrase like hurt people hurt people. And I've really internalized and fully believe that whatever someone says about me or about anyone else says way more about themselves because I would never talk about someone on the internet like that, but I'm happy. I wouldn't talk about my friends like that, but I love myself. So when you hear someone say something crappy to you, what it's telling to me is that they feel that way about themselves, right? I had a beautiful friend of mine, and I said something like, "Oh, you're so cute. I just love you. Like, you're amazing." And she said, "Well, you are, because all the good you see in me is only possible because you also see it in yourself." And I think that's exactly true about judgment, too, right? Where I'm my EA, she's so great. She's so open to feedback. And she was saying how like she noticed she was really judging all these baseball players, right? And she was like, "Oh my God, like why wouldn't you get Botox? Like their face is all wrinkly." And I was like, "Hey, can I reflect something back to you?" And she's like, "Yeah." And I said, I've noticed you've been really beating yourself up lately, like the way that you look. And I know that you're feeling a little bit scarce right now with the situation that's going on financially with you and your husband and your house. And I feel like this comment is coming up because you feel scarce and you feel like you should have more money and you should go get Botox because you don't feel pretty right now and you're worried about money and you're judging somehow someone else is using money because you don't feel like you have any. And she was like, "Whoa, okay." But it's true, like every judgment is you can't judge something in someone else without having the internal judgment toward yourself, right? That's why I think so often, like when we see people who comment on someone's sexuality, right? And you're just so bent out of shape that someone is, for instance, gay, it's like maybe like you doth protest too much, like why do you care? And sometimes it's putting a mirror back at someone thinking like there's a little internal feeling that you feel ashamed to admit, and so you're going to judge it when someone else is free to express it.
I made this semi joke with someone and I said that there's two reasons why you care about someone's bedroom, either because you're trying to get in it or you're trying to be protective of it, right?
Mm,
So to your point, when people care so much about what other people are doing, which one out of the two is it?
exactly.
Right? And I forget who said this comment, but they said it. I think it was a celebrity, but they said it online saying they asked people if you had to pay for every negative comment you
Ooh,
wrote online, would you guys still do it? Some people
what
said they
a
would be
good one.
bankrupt. Yeah, some people would be bankrupt.
Yeah.
Right? Some other people are like, how much terrain? Right? Because now they're trying to get a budget for how negative they could be, right?
Yeah.
But to your point, I think we need more positivity, not to the point where it's like a lie, right? But we wanted to build each other up. Where do you think we can get some of our sources of positive affirmations, positive thoughts, or just positivity in general?
Ooh, okay. Well, first of all, I love to listen to positive propaganda. When I say that, I mean the podcasts that I'm choosing to listen to are podcasts like yours, right? Where I feel like I'm going to have an uplifting conversation, where I'm going to hear people speaking positively of others versus tearing them down. I'm a big fan of, there's a woman, she's free on YouTube, Shivarasana, and she has like breath works with guided meditation, with affirmations that you can say out loud. I love to write down affirmations for myself and record them in my own voice and then play them, especially right before I go to bed and right when I wake up and your subconscious, you're in the theta state. So, I mean, there's so many great resources, like free resources out there, whether it be podcasts or YouTube or making your own, but start to here's the thing. 92% of your mind, what's going through your thoughts today, is just recycled from yesterday. So only 8% do you have the chance to be new. So if you only have that chance for 8%, you got to be pumping yourself full of positive propaganda so that the 92% tomorrow has more goodness in it. And eventually the tides start to turn. And that 92% you're carrying over day to day to day, it is stacked with amazing stuff. But I will say, the process of doing that can be uncomfortable and you can feel like, is this working? Like, why isn't it happening faster? But babe, it's the same thing at like the gym, right? Change at the gym if you're not out here doing Ozempic and steroids and things like that. It's going to be a process, right? To do it the grassroots way is a process. So give yourself some grace, but the tides will turn.
Breath work, ladies and gentlemen, is so underrated. Let me tell you, especially starting your day. Like my parents, when I go visit them, I usually go in the morning, and they ask me every day, they're like, terrain? I'm like, yes, mom, yes, dad. Be a little bit respectful, right? They're like, what are you taking in the morning that gives you all this energy and all this positivity?
Aw.
I was like, it's just me. I just love life. And as cheesy as that may sound, there was a time where I used to worry so much about what other people thought. And I used to worry so much about other people's thoughts about me and maybe their behaviors towards me. But once I started to put myself first, and once I started to understand that I am responsible for me and my happiness, everything changed. Julie, how important is that step to realize you are valuable, you do have the worth, and it's because it's going to come from you?
I feel like we are operating on the same wavelength because I will refuse to work with someone who won't take radical responsibility over their life. Like I have someone who I have so much love for, but every time I talk to them, it's like, well, it's life isn't fair. Like I didn't get the parents I deserve. Like that's not, why do other people get these parents? Like I should get a do-over on life. And I just want to shake them and be like, babe, I am so sorry. It is not your fault that you had such terrible parents, but what you choose to do from here is your responsibility. You have to take ownership of it. Like he is riding in the trunk of the car. I'm like, get in the driver's seat, put the key in the ignition, and like put your hands on the steering wheel. But until you get out of the trunk, like you're kidnapped by life, there's nothing anyone can do for you, including yourself. So, oh, you're just like speaking to my heart. Radical responsibility is the only way you're going to make any change.
Yeah, and if you're going to be worrying yourself all day, every day, that's probably why you have the anxiety, you have the depression, because you're in a state of surviving instead of a state of thriving.
Yep.
And I just wish people would maybe give themselves some more credit and some more grace that they do have the power to be powerful, to empower themselves. Um, what do you think then is maybe preventing some people from starting the journey? Because we've been talking about how to walk it.
I'll be honest, I think being a victim feels good. It's hard to take responsibility over your life, right? If you assume responsibility, then you have to say everything that I have in my life at this moment, good or bad, that I like or I don't like, is because of me, that I am at cause. And so it's interesting. There is like a certain neurochemical feedback loop we get into around complaining and around venting, and it does give you this sneaky little hit of dopamine. And so you're incentivized to keep yapping about why it's not your fault and someone else did it. And you really have to break that feedback loop and get uncomfortable. And I will say nothing that happened to you as a child, nothing terrible that's happened to you as an adult, whether it be cancer or abuse or whatever, is your fault. And only you can make a change in your life moving forward, a new trajectory. And so I will say it is uncomfortable. I know it's uncomfortable. It does suck when you first start taking radical responsibility of your life, but the only alternative is to think that like you were at the mercy of life and then you have literally no agency. It's either 100% agency or no agency. There is no cutesy middle.
Do you think people will, let me rephrase that. Do you think it's easy for people to identify the behaviors of their trauma and anxiety?
Ooh, sometimes yes, and I honestly think that's true because we're in such like a armchair therapist like age with Instagram and TikTok where people can say, well, I'm anxiously attached, so that's why I texted my boyfriend 15 times without him answering, or I'm avoidant, and that's why I haven't answered my girlfriend's last 15 texts. Or to say, like, I know that I have anger management issues. And here's the thing, I hate how aware we are as a society because we've used our awareness as a scapegoat for actual change. We can say, oh, well, that this is my excuse now. I know that I shouldn't be so clingy, but I'm anxious. No, no, no. I have a predisposition toward an anxious attachment, and these are the steps that I'm taking to move towards secure, right? The knowledge that you have over your source of behaviors is not a free ticket to keep, and we both don't love this word, but like replicating your toxic behavior.
Why do you think people are missing that second piece where they can identify or say they can identify, I have this, because I'm going to diagnose myself. But when you ask them, what are you going to do about it? They're like, uh, what? Why do you think people are missing that piece?
I do think we're in a really interesting like culture, a moment, a zeitgeist where we're so obsessed with labeling ourselves. I have ADHD. I'm anxious attachment. Like everyone wants to take a quiz to find out if they're autistic right now, which I'm just like blown away by our desire to like put all these labels on ourselves. I am so careful about what I say after I am. I used to say I am anxious. And then I started saying I experience anxiety. And now even when I talk about my old like state of being, I never say I was anxious. I said I would say I experienced a lot of anxiety. It's not a word that I identify with myself, but it's one thing to have the label, and the label like awareness does feel kind of good. It's like, "Oh, this makes sense. I understand now." You know what doesn't feel good? Changing your behavior. That is hard. Learning a new behavior and doing it is difficult. And that's at the end of the day, I think everything that we've talked about right now is like we're in a comfort crisis. That's a great book. I suggest everyone go read it. But we are in a comfort crisis. It is so easy to be, and I'm not saying everywhere, right? Like I know there's so much conflict globally, and certain communities obviously face harder conditions than others. But it's so easy to like order DoorDash from your phone. Like you don't even have to cook dinner. It's so easy to turn on Netflix and like not go to the gym and lift heavy things. We are in a comfort crisis, and part of that is changing our behavior to reflect healthier, secure, emotionally mature, and responsible adult things. Like we just don't want to do it.
You mentioned labels, and I gave this example with someone where our trauma, in a lot of ways, we find labels for it and we wear it like a jacket with all these label patches, right? And then I have this, I have this, I have that, right?
Yeah.
And underneath it, we don't, because we've been wearing that jacket of labels for so long, underneath it, we don't even recognize our own body. And if you did tell someone to take
Mm.
off that jacket of labels, they get scared because they don't even remember what they were without that jacket. And
Ooh.
someone shared where, Train, you ever, what, do you remember in the 2010s, did you ever hear the word narcissist? And I thought back and I was like,
Oh my God.
I didn't. Like, they're like, okay, what about the 2000s? I was like, I didn't. And then I thought about, I was like, everyone that's been called a narcissist, I'm like, do you know what we used to call them in, you and I look like you're around the same age. You know what we used to call them in the 90s? We used to say that she was crazy and he was broke. Isn't that what we used to call
Oh.
men and women, if you remember?
I definitely remember crazy for sure. It's so interesting. Like, I remember in high school, we had to read this book, right? Like about Greek mythology. So you learned about Narcissus. And then I remember taking a class like in the 2010s in college, and we learned about like narcissistic personality disorder. But then you're right, like in the last 5 to 7 years, I will say, like, people have just everyone's an art. I'm like, everyone is not an art. Like statistically speaking, and that's the same thing where I felt like right before Narcissus. Do you remember when love bombing blew up? It was like, he's love bombing me. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Or are you just like falling for this BS? Like, I think the weird part is we assume so much negative intention on the part of someone else when like do people behave poorly? Yeah, but I don't think a lot of them are sitting down thinking like I am going to behave in this way in order to get the outcome that I want from you. Like it's just to me overblown.
I think we've forgotten the qualifying criteria. I shared with one of my friends that someone called me something. I forget what it was. And I sat there and I was like, you do realize that you have to qualify for, right? Like, to be a criminal, you have to commit a crime.
Yep.
Right? Right. If you're sitting in your home peacefully, you can't be that, right? But I think you're right where from the love bombing, which I remember that blew up, and I remember that's being shared from like texting.
Yep. Oh my gosh. Everyone was like screenshotting, he's love bombing me. It's like, well, you're following for it. So like, who's dumb now?
Yeah, yeah. Because there's always that demographic that complains, and then there's a demographic that they like it. Oh my God, he sent me 10 texts. He loves me. Oh my God.
And a lot of them are overlapping. It's like, so are you going to stop talking to him? No, but he's love bombing me. I'm like, well, then who is the problem here?
From your perspective, then, do you think that some people are maybe using their trauma to gain popularity because without it, maybe they don't know who they are and they don't have an identity?
I see that a lot on social media, 100%, right? Like everyone feels like they're autistic ADHD now. And they've used it like it's become their like it factor that they've built their following around. And I think for a lot of people, like it becomes this thing where I know I'm not good in relationship, but it's because I was abused as a child, right? And like they would rather justify their poor behavior than to take a look at what I'm sure is a difficult past and decide to change. But they also, like you said, I love I've never heard the jacket thing, but they don't know who they are without the like their story. They're so attached to the story of this is what happened to me, or this is the label that I found on a test on the internet, and this is who I am now. And they can't like they don't know what their capital S self looks like.
What kind of tips do you think that could be recommended to help those people along and get out of that thinking?
Well, it's interesting. I don't think that this is a world of like becoming. Like, I don't think you're becoming anything. I think you're creating whoever you want to be, right? So you created this whole personality around a diagnosis of anxiety, for example, right? So you can create a new version of you. And it's true. I used to think that I was a person who was a mean girl, who wasn't a girl's girl, who was a liar, who like would undercut someone to get ahead, right? And that's who I viewed myself as. And now I am a person who is a girl's girl, who is kind-hearted, who want win-win, like no one wins unless we all win is my top personal value. I am honest, I have integrity. And it wasn't that I like you know, I don't know. I didn't have some like God didn't come talk to me one day and like ordain me and make me into a totally new soul. And like that's how I became this way. It was I chose different behaviors time and time again until I shifted my state of being. But it was a choice. And it did require new actions from me and a commitment to being that way. And you like whoever's listening, if you don't like something that you've labeled yourself as, or maybe it's not serving you anymore, you can choose differently. Like as long as you're still breathing, you can make a different choice.
I wish people would understand the power that they have, and it always starts with choice.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so it can be difficult because again, it comes back to this idea that like then it's all on you. It's my choice. I have to take that first step and that can feel really overwhelming for people, but I don't know. I got to a point where I was sick of my own crap. So I chose differently. And maybe you will too. Or maybe you don't have to get to the point where you're so tired of yourself like I was. Maybe you can just do it without like that much pain. But I do think we either make choices because we're moving away from pain or moving toward pleasure. And, those are the motivators.
Didn't it feel so good the day after you realized you're sick of your stuff and then you made changes and you felt better?
I mean, it feels really good now. Yeah, it felt good the first time I realized like I didn't have any like lies I had to account for and like kind of like make sure I wasn't, going backwards on with my friends. Because that was a big thing. Like if you lie, then you're always thinking like, wait, what did I say? And oh, I got to make sure that I keep this story up, right? There's none of that. Like the space I have in my head that is not occupied by the ways I lied is crazy now. Like I have so much room up there to do other things.
I did a dance the day after I was free from the insanity that I kept around me. I
I
loved
love
it.
that.
I absolutely loved it. Because when you've been one way, and maybe you've gone through this, Drew, when you've been one way for so long and you knew that you've always felt exhausted, it's like the weight of it all, of the stress, of the sleepless nights, of the anxiety, of whatever is off of you. And you're like, wow, this is what it feels like not to have this anymore. And I remember it being scary in the beginning, but then
Yep.
after a while, it's like, this is what they mean when they say the future self will love you for what you do today, right?
I really related to the story you shared about like your friend who had friends who weren't like serving him because I had this friend and I loved her so much, but wow, there was so much about that relationship that wasn't serving me. And it was one of those things where the river of life, like it kept, I knew for months that like this relationship wasn't serving me. I need to renegotiate the relationship. But then like the wave of life crashed over me and we had this like big blowout where there was just like no going back. But I remember after that fight when like it was clear we were not reconciling and I just felt this like peace. I just felt this like wave of peace. And I remember I started doing all these things that like I had said I wanted to do, but like I wasn't doing because I was so like enmeshed. Like, I know it sounds crazy, but this girl and I were like codependent on each other. And it was peace and it was space to pursue other things. And it did hurt. Like I had a lot of love and for her, and I ultimately felt really misunderstood in the breakup. But it was also like it's one of those things where I think sometimes people, especially in a romantic relationship, and they feel like, why can't he understand me? I'm trying to make him understand. And it's like, why are you trying to speak French to someone who only speaks Portuguese instead of going to find someone who also speaks French?
Yeah, not being on the same wavelength, especially as you're growing. Some people just grow apart, especially if you're trying to change your life.
Yeah.
It's that quote, right? Like your spirit's going to irritate their demons. And that
Oh,
right? That does
that's a
happen.
good one.
Yeah, it's not mine. I stole that one. The jacket one's mine. That one I did steal. I
Okay.
can't lie about that one. Right? Because it's tough because the more you improve your life, some people will fall away. And
Mhm.
I get it, right? Like you spent 5, 10, 15 years with this person and it's hard. Do you see some people stopping their progress because they're starting to lose some of these long-term relationships weren't aren't with aren't necessarily the best, but because they feel loyal to that person.
Yeah, I think there's a sense of loyalty, and I also think there's a story a lot of people have that it's hard to make friends as an adult. That's never something I've really like struggled with or worried about. I feel like, I mean, I could talk to a wall, as you might have noticed. So I'm always like, I'll make a new friend. But I think we're really like socialized that A, if you have friends from childhood, then you're better somehow. Like you must be an awesome person because you have friends from childhood. And B, like you're not going to be able to make new friends because you don't make friends as adults. And I think that's just another one of those like manuals I'm not sure why we're buying into because I don't have any evidence that it's true. And you don't have to let it be true for you. At the end of the day, I really believe you can't miss what's for you. So there are other people, I'm sure your soul needs to be on its path of highest evolution that you're actually like blocking because you can't let go of what is no longer serving you.
So, Drew, let me ask you one final question before you go.
Okay.
And this question is I want to give you three wishes, Aladdin's genie
Ooh.
lamp, okay?
Okay.
What are three things you wish people knew about support system when it comes to trauma and why?
Oh, about support system when it comes to trauma. Um, okay, one, when you find a support system with the tools and the capacity to hold you, the thing that they're going to give you is safety and like being the lighthouse for you to have your emotional experience. And what they're actually doing is templating safety and through their nervous system to your nervous system. So as you start to process, because they're mirroring safety back to you, you actually create more safety in your own body, and that process like is able to move through. You don't have to hold it anymore. Um, B, when you get support like from a human but also from psychedelics when it comes to trauma, what it's actually doing is creating new neural pathways, and the reason the trauma feels so stuck is because it is like it's stuck in a loop, it's stuck in a neurological loop in your mind, and having that new loop and the opportunity to make new connections in your brain is going to be the thing that breaks that cyclical experience once and for all. And that whatever trauma you have, I hope that someone has told you this, and if no one's ever told you this, like I'm telling you this, has nothing to do with how good you are or how worthy you are or whether it has nothing to do with you being enough or not enough. Like someone else's thing that they did to you, someone else's hurt that they put on to you is a reflection